everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of the ATRL Charts podcast. It's our first in a month, and we've got a lot to talk about today.
Welcome back, everybody. I know it's been a while, but schedules are very fluid at the moment because we're both doing different things. But yeah, it's you, Mitch, Aaron from ATRL, and happy to be back to discuss the latest chart happenings in the past couple weeks and present.
And I am Alexander. I'm Alexander AO on ATRL. If and I did forget to mention that. So first thing that we're going to talk about today, obviously, has been what's really been on everyone's mind over the last few weeks is Rihanna. Um, Came out with Anti in a very strange release. First, it was supposedly leaked and up for 5-10 minutes on Tidal, and later that night it was given away for free on that platform. And then after that, after a million copies had already been given away, it was put onto iTunes. And then it was controversial because the RIAA, the association that certifies singles and albums in the U.S., certified it platinum due to those free downloads, which a lot of people got angry about. And then the lead single "Work" was sent to radio, and nobody knew about it until like 15 minutes before that. It was actually a Rihanna song, um, and it was really a surprise, and it actually ended up doing really well. Its first couple days, number one on Spotify right now, which I don't think anyone's surprised about that because Rihanna's done so well on streaming, and Drake's on the track.
Right.
Um, but I think we've really seen a very, it hasn't been as, I know a lot of people thought that Rihanna would do kind of worse coming off, such a long delay, but it was a good strategy to have a song with Drake and to really get it out immediately, and especially creating buzz with that very interesting release.
Yeah, I agree. The thing with Rihanna and Drake is they're when it comes to singles, they're pretty much like a dream team for radio. Obviously, "What's My Name" was pretty big. "Take Care," obviously, which was released about a year and a half after "What's My Name," was a pretty big hit. It peaked at number 7, but it stayed around on the charts for a very long time. So the third time is basically a charm for them, and I'm not surprised that this song is doing very well right out the box. And to aid with that, the song is very, very radio friendly. It's kind of reminiscent of "What's My Name," which was also like a reggae pop hybrid song, which was released a few 5 years ago. So it's kind of like, I guess, that nostalgia factor when it comes to Rihanna and Drake. Like I said, they're a dream team. I'm not surprised the single is doing very well. The video is not even out yet, so it has even more potential to become a bigger hit than what it is right now. And for you guys who don't know, uh, Work debuted in the top 10 um, a few weeks ago, and also debuted at number one on the sales chart, which is basically the chart that tracks the most downloaded songs in a week, which is pretty good because the song was only tracked for 2 days in that whole period. So for her to uh, to top a chart with so little time is pretty impressive. Um, but back to Anti, which is finally out. Finally, the fans get to breathe and just finally listen to the music that she's been, giving, or she's been making for the past couple years. The whole platinum thing and the free downloads from Samsung, it's a bit controversial, looking at it in a deeper perspective. Um, if you guys don't know, Jay Z did the same exact thing with his last studio album, which was Magna Carta Holy Grail a few years ago, where he partnered with Samsung and they gave away, or Samsung purchased a million copies of the album and I guess generated a million download codes for customers who had Samsung products. So this is kind of the same thing that is happening now with Anti, or that has already happened with Anti. Um, And
But they didn't certify Holy Magna Carta, did
they
they?
did. They actually
Oh,
they
they did. Oh,
certified it
okay,
like
they did.
about a week prior to its actual release. So
Oh, okay.
it was.
Yeah, I was just making sure they were being consistent because I didn't remember the situation well. Because if they had not certified Magna Carta, that would have been really
Yeah,
bad. But okay, they did.
they
So they're
certified
at
it.
least they've been
Yeah, they
consistent on their
they
position.
yep,
Yeah.
you're right. They certified it. But the problem was Jay Z was going back and forth with Billboard and Nielsen, who Nielsen is different from RIAA. Nielsen actually tracks consumer activity and not shipped activity as RIAA does. So Nielsen actually tracks purchases that are made by consumers. So apparently Jay Z was going back and forth with Billboard and Nielsen, asking them, "Well, why can't you count this?" Blah blah blah. Obviously, the end result was that Nielsen and Billboard were not going to count those sales, and then Jay Z sent out a tweet saying, I forget exactly what he said, but he said, if I actually gave away or sold 1 million copies, when then why can't it be counted? And then he added Billboard and Nielsen in that tweet. So obviously there was a little bit of shade, if you want to call it that. Um, but in the end, I mean, Jay Z got another platinum album out of it because Samsung purchased 1 million copies of Magna Carta Holy Grail and got that certified. And here we are, 2.5 years later. Anti partner or Rihanna partnered with Samsung to do the same thing. She has a platinum album. Samsung purchased 1 million copies, and now she has a platinum album. So that's what it is to the public. A lot of people really don't know like the difference between platinum on RIA and platinum selling of an
Right.
album. So to the public, yes, Rihanna has a platinum album. No one knows about the back ends of the deal or whatever. They just know that Anti is platinum. Um, but at the end of the day, no one's really gonna care about how much it's sold. They just know that it's platinum. So to them, they just know that, oh yeah, you know, 1 million people have Anti. Um, but if there are people like us who track sales, look at charts on a daily, they're like, well, Anti hasn't even crossed 300,000 yet. But we all kind of knew this era in a whole was going to be kind of messy, given first of all the delayed release of this album, which was supposed to obviously come out 2014, 2015. It kept getting pushed back, and we didn't know what the lead single was. Everybody thought it was 4 or 5 seconds. Now, apparently, the lead single officially, quote unquote, is Work featuring Drake. So, I guess we can count 4 or 5 seconds, Bitch Better Have My Money, and American Oxygen as official buzz singles, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, they were standalones. I mean, they didn't have anything to, accompany them. The same way that if Hotline Bling doesn't appear on Views from the Six, it will be a standalone, single.
Right.
And maybe not necessarily a buzz single, because maybe they were actually meant to push an album that was coming, but it just didn't end up, working out for whatever reason that Anti had to be, delayed until now. Back to the idea of using Tidal/Samsung as a platform to give away all these free albums and get a certification. I think this could rightly be argued that this is kind of a tactic to avoid any kind of public relations disaster about the album flopping. Because once you've got the word out that your album's platinum, even if your album doesn't even sell 1 million in the long run, or at this point it's looking like in pure sales it's going to have a hard time even going gold. After it dropped to only 47,644 this week, according to Hits Daily Double. So I think it kind of provides something that they can fall back on, Rihanna and her team, to say, okay, well, no matter how many pure sales it's platinum.
Yeah.
And I know it's a little bit conservative, and it's actually a little bit interesting to see Rihanna using that tactic, because she was actually, she hasn't been, I can't recall her in her last eras, being this, what's the right word for it? Being this almost like, I don't know, but this era so far, she feels like the choice of work as the first single, while expected, almost feels a little bit safe.
Mm,
I mean, to just it's like trying the same formula again. After as you mentioned, they've already done it twice.
right.
So it feels almost safe, and so does the idea of sending it to Tidal for free downloads and getting that platinum certification automatically. But who knows? The rest of the album is not safe at all. It's actually quite experimental, and more experimental than any of her past work, you could
True.
argue. Um, so we'll see how any of the other material does if it's released as a single. It'll be interesting to see how the public treats it.
Right.
Um, so definitely something to watch in the future. Um, Next thing we're going to talk about is something that has been a contentious that something that has featured a contentious debate on ATRL, which is "When We Were Young," um, which is a song that really was mismanaged over its first maybe 1.5 2 months because it wasn't put on Spotify. It wasn't really getting any. It wasn't really getting any streams actually for the first 1.5 2 months. It was just basically sales and radio airplay. And now finally, about like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, it was put on Spotify. And it's performed okay so far. It's at number. Actually, I didn't even check what it was today. It was number 46 yesterday, and it is number 46 today. So it entered the top 50. Um, Obviously, not doing nearly as well as Hello did, obviously, which was historic. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of people think this song, after it gets performed at the Grammys, which are tomorrow night, will end up shooting to the top 10 on the Hot 100, where right now it is, I think, in the mid 20s. I have to check that again because number 29, so it's actually in the upper
Okay.
20s. So, do you think it's feasible for this song, after a Grammy performance, to go top 10 on the Hot 100?
I think it is feasible to go top 10. Um, just based off of like previous, I guess, I guess previous history with her singles being performed on TV. Um, she it obviously is very promo sensitive. When she performed at the Grammys 4 years ago, someone singles, someone like you and Rolling in the Deep, which were already well past their peak and further down the charts, shot right back up to the top five on iTunes, and that was during a time where sales were huge. In fact, the number one that week, which was part of me, sold 411,000 downloads, and then I believe someone like you and Rolling in the Deep sold somewhere in the 200 250K range, which is pretty huge for songs that have passed their peak. But you can also argue the fact that those songs also won Grammys that night, so that also contributed to the fact that they got so much of a boost that they did. Um, on the flip side, with When We Were Young, this is, I guess, the first major performance of the song um,
Hmm.
since the album has been released. I know she performed live at the church a few months ago, and she uploaded that clip to YouTube. But again, this will be the first live performance of the song in the U.S., and people will get to see her on a bigger platform now, because I don't believe she's performed on a live television show in the U.S. this era, except for Jimmy Fallon. I believe Ellen is coming up sometime soon, but she hasn't done like the AMAs, which she could have used that platform to push either Hello or when we were young. Um, but I feel like, yeah, I do think that the song will shoot into the top 10, definitely on iTunes, and most likely on the Hot 100. Now, as far as it going number one, that's a different story. By the time this single is already matured, or obviously now, the album has already sold 8 million copies. So it's going to be very, very hard to get a song to sell so much individually when so many people in the U.S. already owns this album. And it's gonna be
It's
it's gonna be tough. And even on the streaming side, we don't
right.
know when the video is coming exactly. We do know that it is on Spotify now and is rising very slowly. Um, but I guess you kind of have to look at also the the amount of airplay it has too. It's already top 10 on overall radio, and it's kind of hovering within the 10-20 range on iTunes, and it just got released to Spotify not too long ago. So, it's not aligning up right now. With the performance, maybe it can give it that extra push that it needs, but in order for it to become a number one contender, like a lot of people are thinking it would be, it's gonna have to pick up a lot on the streams and sales side. And right now, I'm just not seeing that because of the fact that a lot of the streams and sales that it could potentially gain is being cannibalized by the fact that over 8 million people already own this album. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be very tough for it to get that extra push. Now, if she can do it, amazing. She's proved us wrong before. We didn't know she was going to sell 1 million copies of Hello in the first week. A lot of people were predicting 400, 500, thousand, which was a safe bet because of the declining sales. But she pretty much doubled or triple or double, whatever, double the amount of the sales that we had predicted. But top 10 is likely. Not sure how strong of a top 10 hit it would be, but I think it is likely.
Well, I think honestly the smartest thing that Adele and her team could have done, honestly, if they had the video ready, was to hype it up this week, put it out Friday so that it had the whole tracking week, have the performance Monday, and then you have Ellen in 4 days to close out the tracking week. And so in that case, that would have not only boosted the sales, it would have boosted the streams, which are, again, like you mentioned, are the two areas where it needs to improve. And honestly, if that had happened, I could see the song going top 5 if it had strong video streams. Of course, you can't predict the video streams. Of course, they probably won't be as good as Hello's, but you'd still expect them to be very strong.
Right.
So I would expect a top 5 if that was the case. Instead, I think we're looking at the lower reaches at the top 10. Maybe a jump of around maybe 15, 20 spots, depending on how much it rises with the new chart on tomorrow, to maybe number 7 to number 9 range. And I think the important thing to note here is that the most of the room for growth is in streaming.
Right.
Like you said, the song's already top 10 on overall radio, and while it has room to grow there, that room is not nearly as big as the room it has on streaming, where it's only 46 on Spotify and doesn't have a video. And to counter your point that 8 million people own the album, the music buying demographic, like we've talked about in the past, doesn't overlap a huge amount with the music streaming demographic. There are a lot of people my age, I think, and maybe a little bit older, that almost exclusively stream and just don't buy music. And that's the demographic that maybe When We Were Young has some potential to grow with in the future and increase on Spotify. And maybe exposure will be good for that. But again, we can't predict it. I think When We Were Young will end up rising on Spotify, but I can't tell you whether it's going to go to number 30 or number 20 or even number 10. I honestly don't know. And because right now the Spotify charts are more volatile than even the iTunes charts. There are a lot of really unpredictable gains and decreases that happen on the Spotify chart every day that you just can't predict. So it'll be interesting to see how it's received. It's a shame we don't have call-outs yet, because I would have been really curious to see what the call-outs are. Because actually, pop radio's reception to When We Were Young has actually been lukewarm, I would argue. Its bullet has been pretty much below 500 for the last couple of weeks, and it's been increasing very slowly. Hit the top 10, but now it's back down to number 12 after it got passed by Hands to Myself and Cake by the Ocean. So
Wow.
it's really not increasing at a quick pace. Although it will be back up to number 11 in a few days after Same Old Love falls below it. And then Here will fall below it too, because that's just absolutely free falling. So maybe it'll get back to the top 10 then. But the reception has been actually, for an Adele single, and especially compared to Hello, lukewarm. So I'd be curious to see if that's due to the listeners or that's due to the radio programmers. So we'll see whenever the call-outs come back out, which I can't predict. Obviously, they've been gone for almost 2 months, and I don't know. I mean, I just don't know when they'll come back. But When We Were Young needs to not be dragged out by the Adele camp. They need to get the third single out by late March at the very latest, honestly. When We Were Young I don't think is going to have good longevity, even if you tried to make it have good longevity, because it's just not clearly not in terms in the sales department. It's number 15 on iTunes. It's not it's just it's really hard to make a single last with the public when it's already, like you said, it's already on their album. You know,
True.
to try to make it last as its own entity for months and have longevity inside the upper reaches of the Hot 100, it's just probably not going to work out. So I think what you have to do is you just have to move quickly with the singles this era, and you have to hope that good timing, good promotion is going to give them high peaks. And honestly, I said this before, like a month ago. I don't see this era going past four singles, the
Right.
same way 21 didn't go past four
Yeah.
singles. I just don't think that they're going to have any incentive to release any singles past that.
Yeah. That's true because the thing with the era, I mean, the way I look at it, the goal is already accomplished. Looking from just the U.S. perspective, the album is already sold almost nearly 75% of what 21 has sold, in a shorter amount of time. Um, and if we go back actually to 4 years ago, the third single, "Set Fire to the Rain," that single, that's kind of I guess, a an isolated case because "Set Fire to the Rain" was actually doing well digitally before it went to radio. It was actually hovering in the 50s to 60s regions for a very, very long time, before it got sent to radio. And literally, as soon as it got sent to radio, and once pop radio started playing it, it flew up the charts like crazy. It was like, wow, this is very impressive. And by the time early January, mid January came around, it topped the iTunes chart, which was even more impressive because that album had already sold around 6 million copies by that time. And by the time the Grammys came around, it was already a number one hit on the Hot 100. So at that time, the label probably thought, well, why should we promote "Set Fire to the Rain" when it's already a number one hit? Let's just go ahead and focus on, the songs that were nominated for, Record of the Year, which was Rolling in the Deep. But I guess I said all that to say was "Set Fire to the Rain" that kind of showed a bit more promise and hit potential because it was kind of just floating around in iTunes without any airplay, and then as soon as it got sent to radio, it flew up the chart. Whereas "We Were Young," it just kind of mellowed out, even with the amount of airplay that it kept getting every day. I mean, it wasn't rising a lot and it wasn't falling a lot. It was just kind of sitting there, just like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here. And that's kind of when I made the joke about how it was gonna be the errors unconditionally, because unconditionally kind of did the same thing. It was just sitting right there in the 30s 20s region without no rise or no fall, but the airplay was just massively increasing every day. And I guess the airplay rise can be contributed to the fact that the previous single was such a massive hit, so the radio just felt like, okay, we're going to play this too because maybe the listeners are going to like this. And by the time it hit top 10 on radio, it just mellowed out, even like for unconditionally and for when we were young. But I guess the difference was Dark Horse was already just kind of waiting in the wings, so the label just said, okay, we're just gonna give up this fight. Let's just go ahead and send Dark Horse to radio, and then obviously the rest was history with that song. With When We Were Young, there's no obvious third single, or the label hasn't really hinted towards a third single yet. So I guess the radio is trying to push When We Were Young as much as they can before they try to jump on another track. But as you said, Alex, a few minutes ago, yeah, right. I don't think it's going to have a lot of longevity on the charts because of the fact that, it's already sold a lot from its parent album, and two, the song is just not really responding well with the amount of airplay that it gains every day, which is, believe it or not, a determining factor if a song is going to do well or not. But I guess we'll have to see what happens after the Grammys.
Yeah, it's been a difficult climb up the radio chart, no doubt about it. And just my favorite part of the whole Set Fire to the Rain thing is that it unequivocally has the most viewed lyric video, fan made lyric video, at 333.8 million views, which I just love
That is
that.
amazing.
Because it just shows that the demand for that song was just unprecedented. It was just unprecedented for a third single from an album that sold that much.
Exactly.
And I don't think you're going to see that from whatever the third single is for 25. Based on the iTunes positions, you'd assume it would be the Max Martin song, "Send My Love to your new
Right.
lover," which is I believe is the highest on iTunes of the album tracks. But you're just not gonna. I don't. You're just not gonna see that kind of demand for any future 25 single that hasn't been released yet. So for 25, I think what Adele has to do for the rest of the era, if she wants chart success, which I'm not sure she does, honestly. She could not care less at this point, honestly,
Exactly.
because she's sold so much. This is historic in so many ways, um, on all facets, not just sales, but also in streaming and video streaming and on demand streaming. It's just been a historic era, so she really does not need any more success. But if she would like more success, the best idea would be for each of the next singles to go for a high peak in a short amount of time and not focus on longevity, because you're not going to have it. So
Right.
that's what I think she has to do. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes in the Grammys. Who knows? We could be surprised. We've been surprised with the Grammys in the past. That's why it's so exciting. This week in the charts is always very exciting. Almost as exciting as what goes on. You know, VMAs week and Christmas week, and like they say, this is really the biggest night in music. So
Hmm.
tomorrow night, better be watching for every little thing to see how it affects the charts. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Flo Rida, and I don't think anybody could have predicted that we'd be talking about Flo Rida a few months ago
No.
on episode 8 or 7. But his song "My House" is really, really doing well. It just climbed to number 1 on iTunes, and it's still there and it's leading by a pretty comfortable margin, point around 15% over Work at the moment. Um, and yeah, really done so without. Um, it didn't have a whole lot of airplay when it got to number 1 on iTunes, but it's catching up now. It's at number 11 on overall radio, which is still low for an iTunes number 1. That hasn't been just released, and it's up to number 7 on Spotify, where it was struggling before, and it's up to the top 20 on video streaming, where it was also struggling before. So sales led the charge for My House, and now it's morphing into a well-rounded hit where its peaks are going to at least come close to coinciding, and a future top 3 Hot 100 contender. Where did this come from?
I think if you look back, it's about obviously about a year ago when this song came out, or almost a year ago when this song came out. Um, I was tracking to see how the singles were doing from the EP, which is also titled "My House." So "My House" is kind of like the title track from his EP. "My House" was the highest charting song from the album outside of GDFR, which was the single at the time. But My House was charting almost 400 to 500 positions over the other tracks from the album. I said, "Wow, I guess this is the track that the general public wants." And it kind of hovered in the top 200, 300 for a very long time. Even when singles such as GDFR and the Robin Thicke collaboration "I Don't Like It, I Love It" was on the radio, this single just kind of stuck around in the 200s, 300s region, which is kind of unordinary for a Flo Rida single, because normally his singles start to sell as soon as he sends them to radio. So the fact that this kind of stuck around in that region for a long time, I said, "Wow, maybe this is going to be a hit." And as soon as it got sent to radio, it flew up the charts. It's like, wow, that's amazing. And apparently, this is being featured in
Yeah,
WrestleMania's, or this is going to be the, I guess, theme song for WrestleMania's event this year, which WrestleMania is the biggest, one of the biggest sporting events of the year, and that's actually in April of this year. So it's being featured in a lot of their commercials and probably a lot of the promotion that WWE does during their Raw segments and SmackDown. So it's being, I guess, pushed out there, but the reception to me is shocking because I think this is not his best single. I mean, obviously, I thought I Don't Like It, I Love It was better than this, honestly, and it obviously didn't get as much as attention as My House is getting right now. Um, but I'm just I'm genuinely shocked at the fact that, you know, even me, a lot of people counted him out, thought he was, his days of smashing were over, and now here he is topping the iTunes charts, just like he was with Whistle almost 4 years ago. Um, it's just amazing the fact that he still has this digital pull so far along in his career, and his first single, Low, which is his biggest single, which has sold over 7.3 million copies to date in the U.S. It's just amazing how he has, I guess, kind of stuck around with his niche. Like, I think he's found he knows that he can succeed in this environment, in the party songs and the pop rap collaborations. Like, he knows his lane, and I think he knows how to properly adjust for his his fans and for what the general public wants. And I think he knows at this point he's not an album seller. I mean, we just know that. So I think that's why he's probably a switch from releasing full sets to releasing extended plays, which obviously he released last year. And I think that works for him, that works for his label, and everybody's happy. He gets money, the label gets money. Again, everybody's happy. But I am shocked that this song is doing so well. I didn't think it would perform on this magnitude, but I guess the warning sign, or not necessarily warning signs, but the signs were there from the beginning, because it never really left the top 300 on iTunes, even months after the EP was released. So I guess this was kind of a sign, looking back at how it, I guess, evolved on its journey.
And it's also been in a Pizza Hut commercial that has aired pretty often. So yeah, it's definitely got um, exposure, not necessarily promotion in terms of that it hasn't really been performed a lot on national television. Has the exposure, um, and radio was initially hesitant to play it, but it appears to have gotten on board.
Hmm.
The song has an almost 2,000 bullet on pop radio, 1757 to be exact. Although actually it has uh, a fairly low audience. Not. I'll take that back. It's the audience to spin ratio isn't that bad. It's got 67 million AI from pop, and it's number 6 there. It's performing about the same on rhythmic, but it actually has more momentum on pop, which doesn't surprise me because it's more of a pop song than a rap song. Let's be real. Um, and
Right.
it's yeah, and it's basically getting pop and rhythmic support. The thing that it won't get is HAC and urban support, so it's probably just going to stick on pop and rhythmic, which, for a Flow Rida single is typical, but it probably hurts its chances of going number one because urban and HAC combined, you're missing about up to 68 million AI as the potential if you go number one. So it's a pretty good amount of AI that you just miss out on by not releasing a single that appeals to those formats. Um, he'll have to continue to keep a continue to increase continue to increase on video streaming, and increase a little bit more on on-demand streaming to have a shot at number one, which is kind of feasible but kind of not, depending on how good Love Yourself holds up. Which it's been holding up okay. I mean, it's not been great. Songs at number 4 on iTunes, 4 on Spotify, and on radio it's already decreasing. So I'm actually, oh well, decreasing on pop. Actually, still minor increases overall. But I'm actually less confident in Love Yourself going number one for 7 weeks than I was before. Now I'm thinking it might end up with 4 weeks or so due to this lack of longevity, which really I didn't expect. Because What Do You Mean and Sorry actually have had better longevity than Love Yourself so far, despite having another single breathing down each of their necks. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how Justin's team responds to this song. Apparently not sticking around it for as long as the other two have done. but still, it's been a big hit. Even if it somehow only ends up spending 1 week at number one, it's still been a big hit. Um,
Yeah.
it sold over 1.5 million copies, so that's already about as much as What Do You Mean? Around as much. I still don't think it's as much. And then it'll probably end up selling more in the long run. It still has 175.8 million overall AI, so it's been a big hit. Three big hits from Justin Bieber, three number ones. Exactly what he wanted coming back.
Yeah.
So no complaints for him, despite what we just talked
Yeah.
about. Next thing we're going to talk about. Oh yeah, were you going to
No, I
say
was just
something?
gonna point out that just for some people, like his purpose is the first male album to generate three number one hits since Justin Timberlake's Future Sex Love Sounds, which was literally about 6 years, no, 10 years ago. He had Sexy Back, and then he had My Love, which features Ti, and then he had What Goes Around Comes Around. So it's just funny that the last male album before Justin was Justin Timberlake, but yeah,
Yeah, a couple of those became classics. So we'll see what happens with What Do You Mean, Sorry, and Love
yeah,
Yourself. I think especially What Do You Mean has kind of a classic potential among that teen demographic, but we'll see how it does. It's way too early, obviously, to decide. But yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because, obviously Sexy Back is a classic, and maybe we'll see the same thing happen with one of the singles from Purpose. So it'll be interesting to watch. Anyways, the next thing that we are going to talk about is Selena Gomez and Hands to Myself, which is on track to become another good hit for Selena Gomez. Uh, However, it's being hampered a little bit by decreasing video streams. I think on the YouTube chart this week it decreases from 32 to 36. Maybe I'm checking. I'm in the streaming thread right now, but I have to get it to load. But it did drop on the YouTube chart this week. It stayed pretty steady in the lower reaches of the top 10 on Spotify. And on the YouTube chart this week, it dropped from 33 to 36, so I was close. So bad video streams, but it's done well on Spotify. It's doing fairly well on iTunes. It's number 11, so it's hovering around the top 10 there. And on overall radio, it is lagging behind at number 26, but it's getting 2 million updates, and it's increasing fairly quickly on both pop, and it's increasing pretty quickly, I think, on rhythm. No, it's not, actually. Okay, more question marks than I originally thought. So, this single, when I wrote this into our topic list 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, um, I thought it might have potential to become her biggest hit yet. Now that's more in question, because of these struggling video streams and because of this um, lack of improvement, if you will, on both Spotify and iTunes. I think one of these metrics has to strengthen if it's going to go top five. It probably won't return to the top 10 this week, and it probably won't return to the top 10 next week because of the Grammys effect. So, how high do we think this is going to get eventually? Will the video streams bounce back? And how well is it going to end up doing on overall radio, where it's only 26 at the moment and could easily end up peaking outside of the top 10 somehow?
yeah. I guess just to back up a bit, I am shocked at the fact that this single just kind of collapsed, if you will, because it was on a very very good trajectory after the video, and then just kind of stalled and dipped within sales and streams. I was like, what? How does that happen? But I feel like with the airplay starting to build up, it can return to the top 10. Definitely in the lower rungs, like the 6 to 10 region. I don't think it's done completely with the top 10 yet. And it's starting to increase again on iTunes, with the songs that are falling away from Super Bowl. But now we have the Grammys coming up again in the next couple days, so it has to fare along with that. And I know Selena's not joining anything Grammy related, so she's gonna have to take the back burner for a few days on iTunes. But overall, I'm not so sure either. But she has proven us wrong before with same old love and good for you, which end up sneaking into the top five eventually, like around the time that they were peaking. I'm not sure if this song will do the exact same thing, but um, I do notice that the airplay is starting to pick up a bit, which could be promising overall. It's still top 10 on Spotify, I believe.
Yes, it is number
Okay,
9.
so yeah, it's still holding up well on Spotify, and the streams can eventually increase over time, maybe over the next few weeks. But um, as far as the biggest hit thing, yeah, I'm not so sure because I know I was claiming that it was gonna be her biggest hit, and it had a potential to actually crack into the top three, which would be amazing. But I think I'm gonna be a little bit more conservative now, looking at how things have trended over the past couple weeks, and kind of stick with the 6 to 10 range. But I mean, obviously, it's already peaked at number 7 on the Hot 100, which is good. We're not taking anything away from that. She's gotten her third top 10 hit from the era, which I mean, that's huge because that's nothing that Selena Gomez has done before. Um, but I think it's going to have a harder time getting into the top five. It's if it's trending in that direction again. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to stick with 6 to 10 at this point just to be conservative. But I'm not sure if it's actually meant or if it's going to actually have the capability to go top five at this point.
And I feel like one of the things that is kind of, I mean, I guess you would think that Same Old Love still being number 6 in overall radio would hamper its ability to accrue airplay. But it actually it's had a few nice updates on pop lately. Um, so I'm not sure how that's going to affect it in the future if it does at all. But it's important to note that, yes, Same Old Love is 20 positions higher than Hands to Myself on the overall chart. Right now it's probably still stealing some spins away from Hands to Myself. Um, and maybe in a few weeks, we'll see Same Old Love fall faster and Hands to Myself start to really pick up and hit the top 10 on overall radio. Of course, this is all a best case scenario. But if that happens, if Hands to Myself can get to the top 10 on overall radio, if it can stay in the top 10 on Spotify, if it can stay near the top 10 on iTunes, it'll probably get back to the top 10. Now, top 5, biggest hit? No. I don't see it. Especially with the video stream so low. After a strong first week, it had a very strong first week. But now it's barely in the top 40 in terms of YouTube, and that's a big disadvantage, obviously, because as we know, on-demand streams aren't total streams, and you have to factor in video streams too. And it's actually very surprising. One of the biggest disparities between on-demand streaming and video streaming is Hands to Myself. The other one being Roses by the Chainsmokers featuring Roses, which is number 8 on Spotify while being number 29 on YouTube, which is another big difference. Besides that, there aren't many songs that are off by more that have a more than 20 position difference between their YouTube and Spotify positions,
Right.
except for some older songs that are just having longevity on YouTube. Not many current songs that have such a big disparity. So it's concerning for Selena Gomez if she's trying to make this her biggest hit. She's going to get pushed down next week this week by the Super Bowl. She's going to get pushed down next week by the Grammys. She's going to have to find some sort of opening. I think she may spend, some more weeks in the top 10. Not sure how many
Yeah.
more weeks. It could be, I don't know, depending on the longevity, it could be only like 3-4 weeks, but maybe something like, I don't know, 5 to 7 more weeks in the top 10 if it does well. But I don't see this re-peaking, honestly. I don't see it re-peaking. Maybe it matches its peak of number 7, but I don't think it's going to re-peak. So I actually think it will be the smallest hit from this era so far, seeing as Good For You and Same Old Love both peaked at the number 5 spot, which are her joint biggest hits at this point. Although Good For You you could make the case for Good For You because it sold more and was slightly bigger on radio, but then you have to adjust for the sales climate, and you have to adjust for the fact that streaming has grown, so Same Old Love streaming numbers shouldn't be weighed as heavily as Good For You, and it's a mess. But generally, they're basically just as big, or basically.
Yeah.
But this, Hands to Myself won't be on that level. But it's still a hit, obviously top 10. 3 top 10s in a row for Selena Gomez is very good, considering that she was only able to get one last era. Actually, I don't think that the heart wants what it wants. It really counted as an era because that album was just a greatest hits album.
Right.
But the album before that, she still only had one top 10 with "Come Get It." So still 3 top 10s, very good for her. And 2 of them are her joint biggest hits. So very good era for her. Despite what I'm projecting for that. Okay, So the next thing that we're going to talk about is Zayn, who had a number one debut, but kind of a deceptive number one debut, considering that the song is actually one of the weakest number ones over the last 3-4 years. It's going to drop to at least number 6 next week on the Hot 100. And the questions are surrounding its longevity, and surrounding how it's going to end up doing both on streaming, where it's holding up very strongly, and on radio, where it's not inside the top 60, and obviously with only 33 million AI, there's a lot of space between it and the top 20 for it to stall and decrease. So how will this song hold up? Will it have the longevity that previous number one debuts have? Will it have longevity close to that of previous number one debuts, or will it fizzle out pretty quickly like a Hold It Against Me? What do you think?
I think obviously, well, let's just get it out the way now. I don't think it's gonna have. Obviously, it's not gonna have the longevity as like um, "Hello," "Shake It Off," or maybe even "What Do You Mean," which were the last few hits to debut at number one. I'm seeing this more as like somewhat stronger than "Hold It Against Me," but slightly less than "Part of Me," which those two hits really didn't have much longevity in the top 10. Those are, in my opinion, those are number one debuts that were generated mostly by hype. I mean, at the time, Britney was pretty huge. She had a pretty big digital pull. She did 411,000 downloads in the first week, and then she kind of just tumbled down afterwards because as radio airplay grew, the sales dropped. Similar to Part of Me, she had her big debut after the Grammys. It debuted with also, ironically enough, 411,000 downloads, and then its digital sales started to drop after the Grammys. So I'm looking at it more as kind of like somewhere between Hold It Against Me and Part of Me, that type of longevity. Um, I see about 5 to 10 weeks within the top 10. Maybe on the lower side of that, maybe like 5 to 7 weeks, maybe. Because I just learned that the song now has an On the Verge deal, which means that the song gets pushed by iHeartRadio to promote up and coming artists, and that has worked for Nick Jonas's "Jealous," which was a number one pop hit. Also, Tove Lo, which she had "Habits" was "Stay High," or she had "Habits Stay High." Sorry, got that mixed up. Which also went to number one. Um, and she also, or there were also on the Verge deals that did okay or did well. So now Zayn is doing an On the Verge deal with Pillow Talk, which is aimed at pop radio and also is being aimed at rhythmic radio. And in my opinion, the song does, it kind of fits in with rhythmic radio, so I wouldn't be surprised if even after this On the Verge deal ends, that they continue to support the song. Um, so I think that will give some some longevity to the song, and it won't completely drop down the charts like a rock. Um, but as far as like the longevity, like doing like a comparison, I mean, obviously it won't have Hellos or Shake It Off or What Do You Mean's longevity, which spent many weeks in the top 10. I think Shake It Off spent about 24 weeks in the top 10. What Do You Mean spent 21 weeks in the top 10, and Hello is still in the top
Yeah.
10. Also still in the top 5 actually on Hot 100 after uh, 13, 14 weeks, I believe. But yeah, I'm seeing more of like a Hold It Against Me, Part of Me type chart run, which isn't completely bad because I mean, once a song hits number one, it's number one. But obviously, it's going to be the sales that kind of like you look at the song, it's like, oh wow, it only sold X amount of copies. Um, but yeah, I think it'll do somewhere in the range of Holding Against Me or Part of Me.
Okay. And I think there are two keys to this song having at least decent longevity. And this song has an advantage, Pillow Talk does, over Hold It Against Me and Part of Me because of the nature of the charts nowadays. And what I mean by that is that obviously streaming has a very large influence
Right.
on the charts nowadays. It had no influence, literally zero, when Hold It Against Me and Part of Me debuted at number one. And it was just sales and airplay. And we know that sales are very front loaded, especially first week for a number one debut, usually. And then airplay is kind of hit or miss. You can't really tell based on the first few weeks whether it's going to end up doing really well in airplay or not. But Zayn, obviously, with One Direction, has had some very successful streaming songs in the past, albeit maybe not with the best longevity, but he still had some strong streaming hits. Most recently, Drag Me Down, which debuted at number one with the highest play count on record at the time. Um, Zayn is the type of artist that really appeals to the streaming demographic, which is a lot of teenagers.
Right.
A lot of, obviously we know a lot of teenagers are the ones supporting, One Direction when they were big. Um, and obviously they're the ones supporting Zayn. Pillow Talk has held strong. It's just below 1 million streams today on Spotify at number two, and it hasn't dropped below number two yet. So honestly, the two keys to this song having decent longevity are strong on-demand streaming, keep that going, and a steady increase on radio. If he has those two things going for him, he's actually going to have better longevity than people think he's going to have. We saw an example that, well, Pillow Talk obviously won't have as much longevity as What Do You Mean, but What Do You Mean was an example of how streaming can actually help number one debuts stabilize in a way that wasn't possible 4 years ago. What Do You Mean obviously had incredibly strong streaming, stayed really stable. That's what, obviously, streaming was the metric keeping it alive in the top 10 for its final 5 or 6 weeks, and pushing it to over 20 weeks in the top 10, tying that record set by Nicki Minaj and Maroon 5, I think, for songs debuting inside the top 10 for weeks inside the top
Yeah.
10. 21 weeks. And it's still number 14, so What Do You Mean has been huge, absolutely massive streaming hit. And if Pillow Talk is anything close to that, if Pillow Talk can have, good streaming longevity, that's going to help it stay in the upper reaches of the Hot 100 for, a decent amount of time at least. And then obviously a steady increase at radio would help to kind of, solidify its, position wherever it ends up stabilizing. I think it could end up spending, maybe, I think it might end up actually, depending on its sales, well, it's number 4 on iTunes, which is, 5 on iTunes, which isn't too bad. It'll obviously get pushed down by the Grammys. But even if this song drops out of the top 10, as long as it stays steady on streaming, it could have good longevity. But we'll see. There's no precedent for Zayn, and there's very few precedents for number one debuts being stable on streaming. Actually, there's only a few. Actually, there's only one. But okay, we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, more people are going to talk about it being a more successful single than what One Direction's ever released, but technically that's not true. Because What Makes You Beautiful was still more successful with its longevity and its sales. We'll see how Pillow Talk ends up doing in the end. So that'll be interesting. Alright, time for our segment, Will It Go Top 10? And it actually closes our podcast this time. And we're going to do 4 songs today, talking about whether they will go top 10. And the first one is by Ellie Goulding, and it's Something in the Way You Move. It's the second single from Delirium, after On My Mind peaked at 12? I forget. But somewhere around 12. This song has had strong radio support, but it's pretty weak on iTunes so far. In fact, on iTunes, it is number 74.
Oh, okay.
So concerns abound over this being another airplay-driven hit for Ellie Goulding, and on Spotify, it has also number 74. Okay, so room to grow. 74 on iTunes, 74 on Spotify, and where is it? 58 on overall radio, but actually that's kind of misleading because it's already 17 on pop radio, albeit with a decreasing bullet. So I've been pretty pessimistic. Will this song go top 10?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's already not really doing well as a, con- a contender for a top 10 hit. I mean, I feel like it'll perform maybe in a very most similarly to Burn, not Burn. the song that just came out. What
On My Mind.
on my mind? I'm sorry, I'm getting these songs confused. But I feel like in the long run, it could perform similar to that. But even that's a stretch, given its digital and streaming history or digital and streaming trends so far. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to even perform similarly to that. But I think at the very most it could. But I don't think it's going to be a top 10 hit at this point. The video is already out. Um, the song, it's been exposed on pop radio for um, quite a while. It's already, top 20 there. Um, but it's
Although I will note that out of any song in the top 20, it spent the least days there at 39. Continue.
okay. But yeah, I think at this rate, I don't think it's gonna go top 10. I mean, the chances of that happening is very slim, probably like 30% at the most. But um, I think after this, or they may be thinking about the third single at this point because I'm not sure if something in the way you move is going to even drive album sales at this point. So yeah, it's a no for me.
Actually, correction on that. Second lowest amount of days, but still, you get the point. It hasn't spent much time in the top
Right.
20. Um, it's only been in power rotation on some stations for like maybe a week or two. Um, and we don't have callouts, so we don't know how the public is responding to the song. But presumably, it's not very good because it's not doing very well on any other metric. Um, this screams Calvin Harris song to me in terms of like the type of chart run it's gonna have.
Hmm.
A strong pop radio hit, and then not really doing anything on iTunes in the end, and not really doing anything on Spotify. Actually, and which is surprising because On My Mind was actually a relatively strong on-demand streaming hit. It peaked at 8 on Spotify, I think, which is better than I expected it to do. And on-demand streaming was actually a stronger metric for On My Mind for some time than sales. But in this case, it appears that the two are equals, with the song at 74 on both iTunes and Spotify at the moment. Um, I mean, the song is sorry. The song is it's kind of what you'd expect from Ellie Goulding this era. It's a dance pop song, synth pop elements of synth pop. Um, nothing too out of the ordinary. So radio is going to support it, obviously, considering that she's had a lot of success there in the past. Even her songs that haven't maybe sold that well or haven't streamed that well, like Burn, as you've mentioned, have had very nice success on pop radio, doing very well there. Um, so I expect this song to continue to increase on pop radio. It'll probably eventually go top 10 there. No big deal with regards to its overall chart performance, though, which I don't expect it to go near the top 10 on the Hot 100. I'd love to be proven wrong. I love the song. But no, I don't think so. Because, it's very one-dimensional and it's like a Calvin Harris song. So, next. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next song that we're doing for Roll Call Top 10 is an intriguing case. And I really don't understand how these European DJs find these really obscure songs and turn them into big European hits. First of all, before I talk about what song this is, it happened with Omi's Cheerleader. It happened with Robin Schulz's remix of Waves. It happened with the same guy, Robin Schulz, his remix of Prayer and Sea. It seems to happen all the time. They take these obscure songs, and in this case, the song in question was put out, I think, in last spring on an EP by Mike Posner. And this EP was kind of a stripped-back acoustic EP that no one really cared about. Sorry, but that's the truth.
Right.
And that was a good pun because the truth is the name of the EP. And the song is called "I Took a Pill in Ibiza," and it's kind of like a very reflective ballad. And it was remixed somehow, and it's now a hit in North Europe, and it's now on track to become a hit in the United States, where it's had a very nice Spotify performance so far. It's just outside of the top 10. It's peaked at 11, number 13 today. Radio seems to be on board. The song is increasing with a 1300 bullet at number 25 on pop radio. Although I am a little bit concerned about this song having only pop radio support and not much rhythmic support, The song is 40 on Rhythmic with a decent bullet, but I don't think it'll actually end up being that strong on Rhythmic compared to Pop. Um, and on iTunes, the song is, where is it? Can I find
I
it?
think it's
It
18.
is
Yeah.
18. Okay, 18. That's strong. So some good indications here for this remix of "I Took a Pill in Ibiza," which, as many people have noted, sounds a lot like "Lean On," which was a big
Yep.
hit, obviously, peaking at number 4 on the Hot 100, exceeding our expectations. One of the biggest chart surprises of the year. One of the biggest chart surprises of the year last year. So, can this song go top 10 and kind of continue that lean on sound, the trend of that lean on sound doing well on the Hot 100?
I think so. I think it has a really good chance in going top 10. Um, Based on the metrics right now, I mean, it's already top 20 on iTunes. Um, Almost or near or in the top 20 on radio or on pop radio. But the video has not been released yet. I know he and ironically Avicii shot the video about a couple weeks ago because if in the song, I don't know if you guys noticed, he says I took a pill in Ibiza to show Avicii I was cool. So I think he wants to have Avicii in the song to kind of reenact some of the things he did while he was in Ibiza. I don't know. But to say all that, I guess I said all that to say is that the video is still being either shot or in the process of being in pre-production and can't or post-production, and will probably be released very very soon. And that could give it an extra push up iTunes and through Spotify. But it's already doing very very well considering the fact that it's kind of just being pushed by radio, and he has not literally promoted the song at all. So this is a good sign. This is kind of like one of those situations where you can actually say no promo because he really has not done any promo with this song. And as far as like the original version, it's actually creeping up on iTunes somewhere. I think it was in the 700, 800 region a few days ago compared to the 1300 region about 2 weeks ago. So people are also discovering the ballad version of the song that he included on his EP. But obviously the remix, the dance remix is going to do much better because that's the song, that's the version that is being promoted to radio. Now it could be a case where the ballad version gets pushed to like adult pop or adult contemporary, which could give it more airplay on those formats, and which would be a win-win situation for him. But right now, it's just the dance remix that's getting the airplay on pop radio, obviously, and on rhythmic radio, which makes perfect sense at the moment. But chances, I mean, I'm gonna say 70 to 80%. I think he has a really good chance. I think people kind of forgot about him. When he kind of mentions that in the
Yeah,
song, he kind of mentions that in the song. He's like, "I made a pop song that people already know about me because of a pop song that people forgot about, or something like that." Which I mean, it's true, but it's kind of like a more like a sad thing to say. But I mean, hey, it's kind of reality. But I'm glad that people are kind of rediscovering him again, because he had Cooler Than Me, which is his biggest hit, peaked at number 6. And then he came back with Please Don't Go, which was like a number 16 hit, and then Bow Chicka Wow Wow, which peaked.
I forgot that was a song.
Yeah, which it peaked, I think, in the top 30 with the Little Wayne feature. So I mean, he's had hits before, but people, once you leave the scene and you're a new artist, people are gonna forget about you. And now he's coming back with this. The song has already done well overseas in Norway, Switzerland. It's already like top 5 or number 1 there. So it's just a matter of time before the song becomes a huge hit here. And I think what helps the song is that it's kind of reminiscent of Lean On, which obviously was a huge hit everywhere, like overseas and kind of here in the U.S. as well. So I think that kind of has it going for it.
Yeah, and I think with this song, it's very interesting. You have lyrics that might get the listener's ears to perk up a little bit because you don't typically hear lyrics like, like the lyric you mentioned of just a singer who already blew his shot. Yeah, my name's a reminder of a pop song people forgot. That's like a very strange lyric to hear in an upbeat dance track. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting song. And like you said, his name has literally been out of the public sphere for 5 years now. So yes, this is truly a no promo thing. People like the song, clearly, and I think you're going to see good call out scores when those finally come back out. Because on the consumer driven metrics on iTunes and on Spotify, he's even doing better than radio. So, and the song isn't discounted. The song's on a few playlists on Spotify, but not a whole lot, and it's just really surged into the top 15 there. So, very impressive, and I have to give this song, a good chance, a 60-70% chance of going top 10. It does depend on the radio, because obviously it could stall out on radio. We know that a lot of songs that have done well on sales and streaming in the past have had their Achilles heel be radio and then ended up missing the top 10. I'm trying to think of a recent example, but there are plenty.
Right.
And we could see it happen here, but I'm pretty confident with this one, simply because of the fact that its performance has so far been totally consumer driven, which is uncommon. So yeah, encouraging signs for Mike Posner. And as you pointed out, the original version could end up getting sent to AC if they want that extra, maybe 15, 20 million AI, and maybe the HAC stations will pick up on it too. I don't know. This isn't going to be a situation where the U.S. takes the original and latches onto it, and the whole world plays the remix, which is what happened with Habits. It's not going to be that. Although the original might end up garnering some plays on some AC stations, but I don't think it'll have a huge impact. Nevertheless, the song with a good chance of going top 10 that we should definitely continue to watch. Next song is the latest from Jason Derulo, and it is Get Ugly. A lot of people think he should have released a song called Try Me, but he didn't. He released Get Ugly. Will it go top 10?
I'm not sure because it had a very very promising start. And a lot of Jason Derulo songs have promising starts, and they end up either doing well or they just kind of mellow out. And I feel like that's what's happening with this song because I feel like it's been well. Actually, it is very slowly rising in sales. Because a few weeks ago it was in the 50s on iTunes, and now it's top 40. So I guess that's some progress, but radio isn't really being that receptive to it, considering that Jason Derulo is a pop staple at this point, or at least for this decade. Um, the airplay isn't coming in as much as I thought it would, and the sales aren't really chugging along as much as I thought they would either. And I know the video is out there. I'm kind of 50-50 on this because sometimes Jason Derulo does do well with promotion. And I know he hasn't really gotten out there to promote, so he's just kind of letting this go along as it is. But I'm kind of like in the middle because it's not doing bad to the point where it's dropping in sales as the airplay increases, but at the same token, it's not taking off quickly enough for me to give it any confidence that it will go top 10. So I'm kind of like 50-55, or I guess somewhere within the 50-55% range of it going into the top 10. But yeah, I'm kind of iffy on this one.
Yeah, Get Ugly has done pretty mediocre so far. It's number 59 on Spotify, just to give you a quick rundown of where it is. 38 on iTunes, 23 on Pop Radio, which actually was number 22 yesterday. It got jumped by Zayn. The song has a low bullet, and just for curiosity, I'm going to look and see where it was a week ago on Spotify, if it's 59 today, and a week ago it was 58, so no progress. Yeah, not looking great for top 10 prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it could go top 30, top 20 maybe. That's being optimistic. Top 10, I don't see it at the moment. We're not seeing the... Yeah, this is a very, like you said, unusual radio reception to Jason's Rule. It also has a pretty low audience to spins ratio. The two songs that sandwich it on pop radio in spins have 31 million, which is Pillow Talk, and 34.8 million, that's On My Mind, while Get Ugly has 18.6 million. So that's not very strong. And like I just said, it hasn't increased in the last week on Spotify. It's outside of the top 50 there. On iTunes, it's 38, which actually, if you consider overall radio, where it's 76, iTunes is its strongest metric, which is a little bit concerning for a Jason Derulo song, because you'd expect radio to support it a lot more than it is right now, but it isn't. So that's gonna sink this song's top 10 campaign. Honestly, I give it a 10% chance of going top 10 because I think it just won't.
Yeah.
So yeah. Not too much to say after that. One more song for this podcast. And this song has received a lot of flack, and I think deservedly so, but there are a lot of, obviously, everybody has different tastes, everybody has different opinions on the song, so I'm not going to go into that. The song is called 7 Years, and it's by a band called Lucas Graham, which are Danish. They are Danish. And the song is a big hit in Europe. It's number 1 in the United Kingdom. It's made a fairly seamless crossover to U.S. radio, and it's been doing pretty well. Although it's still low on pop radio, it's 49 on pop radio, so obviously a lot of ground to cover there. But it's pretty high on Spotify. It's number 20. And on iTunes is its best metric so far. It's number 8 there. It was previously number 6 when it was in the Hot Track section of iTunes, but it's since dropped to number 8. And again, with the Grammys tomorrow, it's probably going to get pushed out of the top 15 or 10. But very strong, very smooth increase so far for this track. Yeah, we'll go top 10.
I think it will. Just because it's showing so much promise, like before any type of like big push. And it's also an indicator is it's also doing well in the UK. Apparently, right now in the UK, it has a 55% lead over the number 2 song, which yeah, so it's like okay, it's kind of a good sign. Um, so I think it will go top 10 after about a few weeks or so. I think it's in a really good position to um, put itself in a really good spot because it has the momentum going for it right now. So I think in the next couple weeks it will go top 10. I mean, I'm gonna say 80% chance of it going top 10. It's already top 10 digital hit because it's already number 8 or number 9 or so on iTunes, and it's kind of shooting up again on Spotify. So I think this is gonna be a hit, top 10 hit. I mean, I'm not really too crazy about the song, but again, it's always nice to see artists who are breaking out to get such big hits like this. So yeah, I'll say about 80% chance.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that could end up preventing this song from going top 10 is radio. Obviously, a lot of ground to cover, like I said. It's only 49 on pop radio, and on overall radio, it is number 82. The song does have multi-format appeal. It'll probably end up doing great on HAC. They'll just eat that up. Just knowing the subject matter and knowing the style of the song, which is very easy listening. I mean, the subject matter is, it's very storytelling. It's very autobiographical almost. Even if it's not actually autobiographical, it has that kind of vibe to it.
Right.
And it's, it's going to have, it's already getting played on alternative and AAA, which again, that doesn't surprise me. HAC, AC, it's already on 5 formats despite only being at 82 on overall radio. Great sign. Although, who knows if the callouts are crap, which they honestly could be with this song. if the, who knows? With this much room to grow, you can't honestly predict how it's going to do on radio. I mean, I could say, well, it'll probably go top 40 on overall radio, but past that, it's kind of hard. iTunes, obviously, very encouraging, very quick climb, very steady climb. No hesitation in this song shooting up to the top 10. Same thing for Spotify, really. It's gotten up to the top 20 with relative ease. It's done so in, I think, around a period of 2-3 weeks, which is a very fast climb. I think it's been around 2-3 weeks at least, I forget. And this song has a pretty high chance of going top 10 in the future. I'd put it around 70%. Although, obviously, it's been a hit in the UK and parts of Europe. That obviously isn't a great predicting factor, because as we all know, there have been dozens of hits over the last few years that have been, massive in the UK and Europe, and, nothing here. But this song is different from those. I think this song, a lot of people have compared it to Let Her Go, which is a song, and I get the comparison actually a lot, because it's, it's a song that's very personal. Let Her Go is. It's a song that's, a mid-tempo kind of, has elements of ballads, a little bit melancholy, almost. And Let Her Go is obviously a very strong hit that resonated with the public here and ended up going top 5. Now, I'm not sure, obviously, if 7 years will be that successful, but I do think it will end up hitting the top 10. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually wraps up today's podcast. And actually just on time. 76 minutes, so that's pretty good. That wraps up today's podcast. If you have anything that we should, any topics that you'd like us to cover on episode 12, make sure to post those in the thread or send them to the Twitter account at Charts Podcast, or my personal Twitter, actually, at Alexander AO ATRL. And other than that, take care, enjoy your Valentine's Day, and have a good week.
All right. Thank you.